opportunity as well to host all these countries and to take forward issues that India thinks are extremely important. Now, this summit in Bali, of course, is being held under the theme of Recover Together. This, of course, is a post-pandemic the first G20 that we are seeing, with all leaders essentially coming together. And the theme Recover Together essentially talks around the fact that all the G20 countries need to work together for energy as well as food security. Of course, leaders also do take selfies, so that on your screen is sometime being enjoyed by the leaders over there who have assembled for this meeting. I think sitting right next to the Prime Minister is the French President Emmanuel Macron. We are also told that the Prime Minister, of course, had a brief meeting with the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and there was a meeting between all right. And of course, we also know that there was no designated meeting between the Chinese President and Prime Minister Modi, but they did meet each other at dinner. Mr. Nalapat joining us right now on this as well. Mr. Nalapat, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. G20, of course, you can see those pictures over there. India assumes presidency this year. What do you think for India will be the key goals and objectives? And also, very quickly, Mr. Nalapat, do you think that, the fact that there's some trouble in Poland would have been discussed? And do you think that that will lead to more pressure being put on Russia?
Well, I'd like to say that the economy globally is suffering a lot as a consequence of the Ukraine war. And Prime Minister Modi has been absolutely accurate in saying that this should be an era of peace. Unfortunately, I don't see peace happening, mainly because Joe Biden and Olaf Scholz, to name just two of the NATO leaders, they seem obsessed with continuing this war, and Zelensky seems obsessed with having a maximalist position, which is not going to be acceptable to Russia. So this is going to go on. The G20 is not going to make much of a difference to that. But the reality is that it will showcase India's stand. And India's stand is a stand in favor of peace. It's a stand in favor of a clean environment. It's a stand in favor of making economic growth and the conditions for economic growth front and center in international policy. That is a statement that will resonate among the leaders of the G20. There's no question about it. And Prime Minister Modi got a very cordial welcome, from all the leaders of the G20. Frankly, with the exception of Xi Jinping, the reality is China is extremely wary of India. China does not want to see India grow because it's afraid that it may grow at the expense of its own expansion. And that is the one country in the G20 that, frankly, we cannot be described as a friend of India. But barring that, it's very interesting how countries across the world, whether it's Cambodia, whether it's Laos, whether it's Germany, whether it's France, they are all very friendly to India under Narendra Modi. And the reality is that's because Modi has emerged as a global statesperson, and he's essentially giving a message of the need for development, the need for peace, the need for a good ecology. And that development is being reinforced by several of the policies that India is following.
Absolutely. Mr. Nalapat, over the next 1 year, as India, of course, takes over the presidency of the G20 Summit, what do you feel should be our main priorities, and how do you think it could work in India's favor going forward?
Well, I'd like to say that the main priority needs to be to ensure a free and open and inclusive Indo-Pacific, because the reality is that the age of conquests, the age of expansionism should have ended. Regrettably, it has not ended, and one country is there, very active in the G20, and I'm sorry to say that ex-President Trump is going to be greatly helped by the visual images of Joe Biden almost running towards Xi Jinping and essentially ignoring all the activities that Xi Jinping is engaged in throughout this particular region in which this conference is being held, whether it's India, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, all these countries, Taiwan, they're all having their sovereignty under threat by a very aggressive China. And what does Biden do? He tries his level best to be Mr. Nice Guy. Xi Jinping is not Mr. Nice Guy. He's made that very clear. And the Chinese readout, if you believe the Chinese readout, and so far the Americans have not denied it, it essentially means Biden is conceding to Xi on almost every critical issue. And this is going to work very much in favor of the Republicans. I frankly, if Biden is made the candidate once again of the Democratic Party, then Trump has a chance. There's no question about it. But frankly, more and more, as the political situation in the US develops, it's very clear that Joe Biden is going to be a one-term president. If he accepts that gracefully in the next 6 months, good. Otherwise, it'll have to be through the voters of the United States.
Absolutely. And as you pointed out, of course, Donald Trump did refer to the fact that he believes that the US is giving in to China in that speech that he just made a while ago. Mr. Nalapat, appreciate your speaking to us on Republic TV. Thank you very much for joining us. So pictures on your screen, of course, are continuing to come to you from Bali. That's where the Prime Minister will take over the presidency of the G20 Summit, the top economic powers of the world meeting over there. Key on agenda, of course, is food and energy security. And what we are given to understand, of course, is that even as India takes over the presidency over the next 1 year, we will outline our vision for the G20. You are watching Republic TV. We slip into a very short break. And on the other side, we will be bringing you more news, including, of course, latest on a terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir.